Okay, this is the beginning of part B of chapter 23. We did glomerular filtration last time. So we will pick it up from average glomerular filtration rate. The average filtration rate is 125 milliliters per minute, and that extrapolates out to 150 to 180 liters per day. Now, do we generate and release 180 liters of urine per day? No. 180 liters, if you compare that to your total blood volume, it'd be 60 times your blood volume. You can't risk losing that much. And that's why we have 3 other processes in urine formation. Higher blood pressure is going to increase this rate, but this is opposed by osmotic pressure in the tissues. So higher filtration rate, higher blood pressure increases it, but it's always going to be opposed by osmotic pressure. Anatomically, the afferent arteriole is going to be bigger than the efferent arteriole. So you have more going into the glomerulus than coming out of the glomerulus. So that creates higher pressure and increasing the force. All right. So ways that we regulate glomerular filtration. During times of stress, the sympathetic division is going to vasoconstrict the afferent arteriole. This is going to decrease the lumen, so we lower the volume, but we're going to increase the pressure. This ultimately will reduce filtration rate and reduce urine formation. If you don't filter as much, you don't make as much urine. So when stress is gone, then you're going to make more urine to get rid of that. The second way is the renin-angiotensin II mechanism. When blood pressure is low, you see that here, the liver is going to secrete angiotensinogen, which is a protein that's 453 amino acids long. You don't have to know that number, but this is just to give you an idea rather than showing you a picture of it. And the kidneys secrete renin. That was one of the functions of the urinary system. Renin changes angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1, which is only 10 amino acids long. So basically, renin is like a pair of scissors cutting off 10 amino acids. Angiotensin 1 is altered by ACE, the enzyme from the lungs, to become angiotensin 2, which only has 8 amino acids. All of this happens in the blood. Now, angiotensin 2 is still considered a hormone, but it's a chemical messenger that's assembled by secreting 3 different materials into the bloodstream. There are 3 actions of angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 can increase blood pressure, this box down here, By 1, the hypothalamus emits feelings of thirst to stimulate that you drink water to increase total blood volume. Aldosterone is secreted by the adrenal cortex to cause water and sodium retention, but it also is going to lower potassium levels. Increasing water and sodium is going to increase blood pressure. 3, it's going to vasoconstrict blood vessels. Again, decreasing the lumen and increasing the pressure. So 3 actions of angiotensin 2. Yes, it has to be Roman numeral, not the Arabic number. Okay, another way. It's called renal autoregulation. There's 2 parts to renal autoregulation, but it's a way for the kidney to self-regulate. So you have built-in anatomical and physiological processes. The kidney's going to tell itself what to do. So myogenic control and tubuloglomerular feedback. Okay. Myogenic mechanism or myogenic control. Smooth muscle contracts when stretched to increase the blood pressure. So this means that the afferent arteriole is going to vasoconstrict or vasodilate to maintain stable glomerular filtration rates. So regardless of what the blood pressure is doing, you can have the myogenic control within the kidney. So myogenic in smooth muscle tissue requires a stimulus. So an increase in the stretching or an increase in the pressure or a decrease in the pressure. All right. Tubuloglomerular feedback. So we have to define the juxtaglomerular apparatus. This is found in every nephron. It's where the distal convoluted tubule is going to be anchored to the afferent arteriole. There are 3 kinds of cells in the juxtaglomerular apparatus. You have juxtaglomerular cells, and that's these turquoise colored cells that are wrapped around the afferent arteriole. You have modified cells in the distal convoluted tubule called the macula densa. And then in between, filling in that space, is the mesangial cells. Juxtaglomerular cells, macula densa, and mesangial cells. Okay, so the mechanism involves or is called tubuloglomerular feedback. Again, every nephron has this. The mechanism is the macula densa can compress the afferent arteriole, or it can relax. So it can constrict the afferent arterioles, or it can dilate the afferent arterioles. Tubuloglomerular feedback. So glomerulus, the blood flow going into it, and because it's involving one of the renal tubules. Okay, the second part of, or the second process in urine formation is called tubular reabsorption. Tubular reabsorption is moving solutes out of the renal tubules and putting it back into the bloodstream. So we're focusing on the blue boxes. Things are coming out of the renal tubules and going into the bloodstream. So either vasa recta or paratubular capillaries. Most of the material comes out of the proximal convoluted tubules. That's why you have this huge box. The second volumes come out of the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting ducts. The smallest amount comes out of the nephron loop. All right. So, unfortunately, if we look at this list, we're going to see some things that we don't want back. We don't want lactate. We don't want urea. We don't want uric acid. If we have too much sodium, we don't want it back. But we do want things like glucose, amino acids, proteins. We do want water back. We want to conserve that. So the mechanisms are what we use this for. And you have a table. You have passive transport and you have active transport. You have two kinds of active transports. You have symports and you have antiports. The symports, you're going to move two things in the same direction at the same time. The antiports, you're going to move two things in opposite directions. So the examples, you're going to have two things put together. So for the symports, you have sodium ions and glucose. Oh, I need the pen instead of the. So, symport, sorry, two things at the same time in the same direction. Sodium ions hyphen glucose. Another symport is potassium and chloride ions. Potassium ions, chloride ions. Okay, antiports. You have the sodium potassium pump. We'll put these down here. you have the sodium ion and hydrogen ion, and you have the chloride ion and other anions. Okay, then you have the osmosis or pores, and that's going to be simply water. This aquaporin just moves water. So that's a passive transport through osmosis. Then you have solvent drag, which is different. Because the solvent, which is water in this case, is moving because of osmosis, it's going to pull some solutes with it. And that's where your big list comes in. So water, urea, uric acid, sodium ions, potassium ions, chloride ions, magnesium ions, calcium ions, and inorganic phosphate. And that gives you most of the mechanisms. It's not the only mechanisms, but it's the big ones. All right. The third process in urine formation, now that we've pulled this stuff back into the blood, is tubular secretion. And this time we're going to focus on the pink boxes. Here, we're moving solutes, actively transporting solutes out of the blood and putting it back into the nephron, the renal tubules. Most of it, again, is going to happen in the proximal convoluted tubule, second largest amounts in the distal convoluted tubule, and the collecting duct. The least amount passes through the walls of the nephron loop. Notice most of this stuff is what we want to get rid of. So this is a way to increase loss of urea, uric acid, creatinine, ammonia, which is this NH4 plus, some drugs, again, ammonia, potassium, hydrogen ions, and urea. All of this is going to be active transport, so we have to exert energy, expend energy in order to move these things out of the blood. And that's because we're trying to concentrate them inside the renal tubules, which goes against the universe wanting to evenly distribute things. The ways that we regulate the last three processes, and I don't know why they didn't go ahead and define the last process, but anyway, this is going to regulate all three: tubular secretion, tubular reabsorption, and water conservation. So one is the hormone aldosterone. It's a steroid that comes out of the adrenal cortex, which should be a reminder back to the endocrine system. And that's going to increase tubular reabsorption of sodium and chloride. Sodium and chloride, sodium and chloride, sodium and chloride. It's also going to help with water conservation, pulling water out of the renal tubules. So pulling it out, pulling it out. So it helps the body to retain or hold on to sodium chloride and water, but get rid of potassium. Okay, another hormone is the antidiuretic hormone. This comes out of the hypothalamus after passing from or being received from the posterior pituitary gland. It's going to increase tubular reabsorption and conservation of water. So we can see the reabsorption of water several places, and more water comes out of the collecting ducts than what is illustrated here in that last process. Antidiuretic, if you think of a diuretic as something that makes you get rid of water, this is going to make you hold on to water. Natriuretic peptides. Natriuretic peptides come out of the atria in the heart. They have several actions. They're going to inhibit the secretion of renin, aldosterone, and antidiuretic hormone. So what this is going to do is help us to get rid of or excrete water and sodium chloride, which also lowers the blood pressure and lowers the blood volume. So it's going to make us get rid of more. So most of the time it's going to block the reabsorption process and make it less permeable to water and sodium and chloride. So it's going to keep sodium and water, sodium chloride and water in the renal tubules. Okay, so that is the end of part B for the urinary system. Oh, come on, you silly thing.